You need to write songs for musical theater. There are books, YouTube videos, several courses that exist to walk you through the process and to give you the opportunity to practice doing it, my workshop course included. But what is far rarer is the rarer? Is rarer a word? Rarer is a word. What is far rarer is information about crafting the book of a musical. And I don't just mean getting information on the formatting of a script, aka the libretto. I mean the planning and creation of the story itself, which becomes the script and the songs eventually. This is the foundational piece upon which your entire musical lies. And it's the most critical piece, far more important than some catchy tunes. Yes, I said it. But there aren't really any books on this, and as far as I know, there are only 2 courses built to teach you this information. So, isn't it time that we dive into this and learn a little bit more about the process? Yes? Art thou with me? Great. Hi, hello. If you're new here, my name is Michael Ratty, aka M, aka your musical theater writing coach, aka musical theater writer guy. You can call me, I guess, anything. Not anything. And I am the founder of the Musical Theater Writing Collective. I teach courses. I am a musical theater writer myself. Been coaching for a very long time, performer, all the things. And one of the courses I teach is about the book writing process because there are not a lot of places out there to learn the process of writing the book of a musicale. And in fact, I am writing a book, not like the book of a musical, like a book that is going to include this process in there as well. It is also going to be part of the new video course series that will be dropping into the Musical Theater Writing Collective online community, which will walk you through the whole process of writing a musical. And this piece about writing the book is just so critical. And we don't have a lot of info out there on this. We have to talk about it. So that course that I teach is called Book and Beyond, Crafting the Musical Theater Libretto. Unlike the flagship musical theater writing workshop course, the workshop course, where you are songwriting that and doing that in a way that's not attached to your personal projects, Book and Beyond is entirely built around working on your personal projects because it's not just about learning a process. It's about actively doing the process. So, and what is this process? Something I've discovered over the years is that when you're ready to create a new draft of the book of a musical, whether that is a first draft, like we are writing the first draft of the thing, or a new revised draft of the musical you've been working on, the process of drafting that book and that libretto is essentially the same. It's basically the same exact thing. Not because you're necessarily starting from scratch every time you go into revision land, but you have to start in the same place. We'll get there. And because this is true, that drafting is always the same process, plus the fact that there's not a lot of information out there on how to craft a great musical book, I created the Book and Beyond course to walk you through that process from start to finish. And y'all, it is a lot of work. And also, when you have clarity on the process, it's not nearly as scary as people make it out to be. Just throwing it out there. All right, but let's walk through what the process is. And then, hey, yeah, if you want to come do it with me, talk to me about Book and Beyond. I'll say more about that later on, but the next round of it starts mid-September. I'd be happy to have you. All right, here's what the process looks like. As we always discuss, we begin with a zoomed out look at the show, where it is and where we want it to be, so we can plan the route to get there. I know a lot of people like to, okay, starter thing. Writers get qualified often in one of 2 categories, as planners or pantsers. Pantser meaning someone who goes by the seat of their pants, like just dives in and starts writing. Whether you're a planner or a pantser or somewhere in between, a mixture of both, I do both, it depends. There comes a time, whether you plan right up front or you pants first and then begin to plan, where you have to do the planning process. This process will come up no matter what kind of writer you are. It's just, when does it come up? And that's ultimately up to you. I'm not going to tell you what your style of writing is, but I am going to walk you through the process. So, we always have to begin zoomed out. And as always, we begin by answering or revisiting the North Star question sets. If you are revising, I strongly suggest that you revisit them, your answers that you've previously had, and make any necessary changes or adjustments based on where you and your show are in the process. Because, like the North Star, the reason I call them the North Star question sets is because the North Star is mostly fixed, but really it wiggles a little bit. There's a little wiggle room in there, motion, right? And that's kind of how the North Star question sets work, is you have a plan at the top of your show when you begin writing it, and you answer those questions, and that's going to act like your North Star. And also, things may change a little bit along the way. It's not a problem. In fact, I think that is a good thing, because you cannot truly know what your show is when you start writing it. It's only after you've gone through some drafting processes and some development that you can truly understand what your show is and how it's functioning. But the majority of the answers to those questions should remain the same. If you've not yet downloaded the North Star question sets, it is a free PDF. Grab it, my friend. It is, I think, one of the most valuable things that I put out there for free. I love my videos. I love things like this. I don't want to diminish the quality of that, but those question sets are gold. Go get them. If you haven't gotten them, go get them. And answer them. Okay. Also, I'll walk through the process today, but I know there are people here live with me. Hi, hello, welcome. Thank you for being here. Feel free to ask questions along the way. We'll also do some Ask Me Anything later as well. All right, so we start zoomed out. We have to answer the North Star question sets questions because those are going to be our guide as we go through the entire process of the musical. The next step in this process is to then write out the story tent poles of the musical that we are trying to write. And if you already have a draft of your show, we want to compare what we've written already to what we are planning now to see how well they match. And this is where in the revision process, people immediately start to get scared. I don't think you should be, because if you are looking at your story tentpoles, and most stories have between 7 and 16 tentpole beats, averaging about 12 for musicals. If you write out your, let's say 12 story tentpoles and where you're headed, and you realize that there is a tentpole or two missing from your previous draft, that is not something for guilt and for shame, my friends. Do not fall into the trap of saying, I'm a bad writer. No, you're not. That stuff had to be written so that this new story can begin, right? It is part of the process. I have several times gotten to a point where I do my story tentpoles and I'm like, oh, poo. Meant to do that and I didn't. Oh, yeah, and it's not in my original planning documents. That's why I didn't do it. Darn it. And then put it in. That's the first step. Okay, story tentpoles. Gotta know the basics, what's holding up your story. The tent, I guess, is your story in this case. We're going with it. Why not? All right. The next step after we do our story tent polling. It's a weird way to say that. We then look at the structure of the show and make some determinations. Because either you have a structure, you need to see if it's working, and if it's a first draft, then you don't have a structure, you need to make some decisions. So first and foremost, we need to know what is the main structure that makes the most sense for us to utilize for this story. There are a lot of structure options out there, my friends. A lot of structure options. The people who are like, well, it's either a 3-act or a 5-act, and that's it. Done. I see why you feel that way. We talk about the emotional arc in terms of 3-act and 5-act always, but that's not necessarily the only choice between those two. There are I think we cover 6 different structure types in the Book and Beyond course. You have options, and we have to look at all those options and the story that we're creating through our tentpole outline, and really focus in on what makes sense for your story at the barest bones level. Okay, because you may find that there's actually multiple structures that you're like, oh, that could apply, that could apply, that could apply. Oh, well, I can't have 3 structures. The answer is no, you cannot. But here's a fun little quirk of the musical theatre, is that oftentimes what will happen is there is a main structure for a musical that makes the most sense. Like, okay, We're going to call this show a 3-act structure. Great. That does make sense for this show. I love it. But it also has some flavors of a hero's journey in there. It's not a full hero's journey, but there's something about the way that the beats of it fall out that it's got a tinge of it, a flavor. So we can actively and intentionally borrow flavors of other structures that are not the main structure and bring them in. It's part of what makes every show feel unique. Don't be afraid to do it, okay? But we do have to know what all of our options are first in order to make that happen. And then the third thing to consider at this part of the process is, what does the proposed emotional arc of the show look like when you graph it out? So you've got your main tentpoles. You've got your structure that you are looking at as your main structure with some of the flavors. Then we have to literally graph out what the emotional arc of the show looks like, because it's important for you to know what the audience needs. We are not writing our shows for ourselves. I mean, in part we are, because we want to tell the story, but why do we want to tell the story? It's not so we can listen to our own story being told, it's so that an audience that we are aiming to reach can listen to the story being told. So the emotional arc is crucial, my friends. Crucial. So if you're looking at me like, but why do we do that so early? The answer is because it's going to affect the deeper outline. And that's where we head to next in the process. When we then deep dive into a big, deep outlining process and begin to create our beat by beat outline using the steps that we discussed previously, which is going to mean that we have our tentpole beats. We know what beats are by this point. We have our tentpole beats. We have our structure and our flavors. We know our emotional arc, which means to get between our tentpoles, we have to begin putting other beats in here. How do we get from tentpole 1 to tentpole 2? Well, certain things are going to have to happen. And this part of the beat by beat outline, like step 1 of that outline, if you will, is really going to be focused on your main characters and or your protagonist. So if you have a protagonist, it's probably all going to be focused through their lens and their journey. And that's cool to start with, right? We kind of grow the outlines the further along we go in the process. If you don't have a protagonist and you have a set of main characters, then probably all of those A-tier main characters will be involved in the initial beat by beat between the tentpoles. That's great. You may find you bring in other characters because of how they relate to those main characters. Cool, but you don't have to focus on them right now, because it is a separate step to then go and look at your characters and tier them out and then create their journeys. It's a process, my friends. It's a process. But I mean, the reason that Book and Beyond is 12 weeks is because at the end of 12 weeks, you can have everything you need to just go finish your grant, right? This sounds like a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but it can happen fast in order to speed up your entire book writing process. The planning's the key. Like I just said in the songwriting challenge last month, pre-write to do less rewrites, right? This is what we're doing. Okay, so when I say tiering out your characters, knowing who is in the A tier, the B tier, the C tier, and is ensemble. Of course, your A tier can also have, at the point of it, a protagonist. But you gotta know who's falling in what categories and why. And then at the very least, you have to go through the process of creating a beat by beat journey for each individual A tier character. I strongly suggest doing it for all your A, B, and C tier characters, because you don't want to lose anything along the way. Leave something out of your big outline. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take all the beats from their individual journeys, and we're going to put them into the big beat by beat, which means this thing is just growing, right? We started here, now here, now it's going to kind of like fluff out a little bit. And it's important to have all of the character moments that are necessary for the show put in there, because that's how we're going to song spot. This is a large part of the of finding the right song moment. Let's just say it that way, because oftentimes we want to dive in and write certain songs. That's great because we know they're going to be in the show, and other times we just want to keep writing songs because we want to avoid book writing work. Don't do that, please. Stop that. Also, by writing out the full beaded journeys of your characters, it's going to help them all feel three-dimensional, help them feel truly fleshed out. So it's important we do it. We then visually plot out the journeys of each character tier, and we kind of use it and put it into the big outline. It's a process, but it's fun. It's good. Whew. Now, if all this already, because we are, what, halfway through the process at this point? If all this already is sounding a little bit overwhelming, I get it. It is a little overwhelming, especially with me just like talking it at you. But I'm happy to walk you through the process inside Book and Beyond. It's a 12-weeker. It's short, 3 months, in and out. Personal projects. And we are going to go through the process. I'll walk you through. There's curriculum also along the way to explain all of these things. Like we go through all the show structures. We do examples of everything, all the way from outlining and tent poles and beats and characters and tiers and character relationships and how to qualify things and how to put it into your bigger outline and then like dialogue sample, all sorts of things. We look at actual librettos from the canon and we walk through the examples and we analyze them. Because, yes, this is a process. Yes, the process is going to give you certain things that you must hit along the way, but every show looks different as it goes through the process. So we walk you through. Me, walk you through with whoever else is in the room with us, your peers. And there's moments for feedback along the way as well. One of our first major feedback moments is the big beat by beat outline. So, if you're like, this is overwhelming, help me out. I would love to. I'd love to help you out. Also, I guess I should have a link to the course. I keep talking about the course. Here, I'll put it in the chat. I think it's in the description, and I'll pin a comment later on. All right, that's enough stalling. Here's the rest of the process. As a reminder, I will stick around for some Ask Me Anything questions today. I have to hop off a little before noon, but I'll still be around. All right. So the next step after we finish our gigantic outline is to look at the language of the characters and the world of your musical, deciding on what dialogue looks like and feels like across your show. There are exercises here to pull you out of the box if needed, because I will say there are there are a couple of pitfalls that come up. Okay, I'd say the three biggest pitfalls I see are all of the characters sound the same, and they're not individualized. We do have to make sure everybody sounds different. It is very important. Number two is every character sounds like the way the writer speaks. I've certainly been guilty of that in the past. I'm like just happily writing along with infusing my vocabulary, the way that I phrase things into all of my characters, even though they're distinct from one another, and then I have to go back there and be like, oh, this sounds like me, not like them. Oops. And then the third major error I see is that people don't vary their dialogue from one show to the next. But generally speaking, we are going to be in a different world, with different characters, in a different time, doing a different story. Therefore, the language should change between shows. So you have to be really mindful and intentional here about how we piece together the dialogue. And we even write a dialogue scene that with some specific parameters for your shows during Book and Beyond, and that is one of our share days as well. We choose a scene involving either your protagonist, if you have one, or an A-tier character that doesn't take place in Structural Act 1 and also leads to a song moment. And those are fun. It's nice to start to get a handle on the language of your piece, get some feedback, and kind of use that as a template. Anyway, onward. As I mentioned, we look at tons of examples from the canon because dialogue feels extremely different from one show to the next, and it should, absolutely should. Also during the course, just as a side note, because yes, dialogue is the first like script stuff that we're talking about, like libretto stuff. Which means we do have to hit on some other things. We do talk about formatting because that's important. I also have a libretto formatting guide. It's if you're a collective member, you already have it. It's in there. Just like type it into the search bar, it'll come up. If you're not a member, you should be. But also you can purchase the libretto formatting guide. I think it's like $7. And because we need to know how to format our librettos, it's important. So we do talk about also things like stage direction and stage action, because those are different. We also talk about like software options, so you can get a sense of like, how can I make this easier? And we cover a couple of other things in there as well. All right, the last major piece of this process then that we need to put into place to be ready to finish out the show is to create our structural act one in depth. So this goes beyond just like having the beat by beat outline of that act that is going to be the basis for it, and we're going to go much further. So it's going to involve figuring out the flow of exposition, uh, your major early story beats, character establishment moments, the opening sequence, the inciting incident, important things to hit along the way. And then on top of that, we're going to write as much of that structural act as we possibly can at this moment in time. And for some people, that will mean like they're doing some lyric writing along the way. Cool, great, lovely. Start doing that songwriting work. I love it. But more than that, it's going to be a lot of dialogue work and figuring out expositional things, which is everyone's least favorite part of the process. Or at least that's what it seems like. I don't mind writing exposition. I feel like once you have a handle on who your characters are and what your story is doing and when and how, avoiding things like, as you know, you are my brother, is actually pretty easy to do, but everyone feels differently. So at the end of this process, what you're going to walk away with, whether you do it with me in Book and Beyond or you do it yourself, is a structural outline fully fleshed out as much as possible, a full, deep, beat by beat outline with all your characters tiered out and all their journeys fleshed out. Going to have a dialogue scene as your template. You're going to have, and that also shows you your way in and out of music as well, which is important. You're going to have your emotional arc plotted out. You are going to have your tent poles and your North Star questions. Basically, you have every tool you need. You did all the hard stuff at that point. Oh, and you have your songs spotted as well, or potentially spotted. I was like, I know there's 8. There it is. And you have everything that you need at that point to then finish the draft. You did the hard stuff. All the rest of it is follow your outline, use your templates, and just write. That's it. And that's how we move through a drafting process fast. And again, if doing it sounds daunting, I do get it, but it speeds up everything so much. So this past cohort in the spring, I did the process along with them because I had a libretto that I was avoiding writing. And I was like, oh, fine, I'll just do it with them. It's fine. By week 8, I had a full first draft of the show. Like, once I started getting into it, I was like, oh God, I want to go faster than the course. So I did. And I had a full first draft. Actually, by the time the course ended, I believe I had a second draft. So the process works. Like, I've used it for all of my shows since I think 2015 is when I really codified this for myself. Um, it's how I wrote the Gershwin show in 4 days. It's how I was able to write this recent libretto so fast. Like it is a process that works. It hands you everything you need, does all the hard work up front. Like I'll hold your hand along the way if you want to do it with me, and we will do it with feedback, and then you're good to go. So that's what the process looks like. It's fun. I enjoy it. I think it's delightful. Plus, I really enjoy diving into the nitty-gritty of people's shows with them. So if you want to do it with me, talk to me. Go ahead and apply to Book and Beyond. We can have a convo. See if it's right for you. I won't push you in any directions. So that's what I got for you today, friends. That is the process. That's how we do it. It's a lot, but also it's so doable. So I'll stick around for some Ask Me Anything. You can ask about the process, about the course, about anything else. Got a little bit of time. I know that there's more and more lag here on these live streams, so I'll kind of like pause, give some moments for y'all to write some questions or whatever you do. If we don't have any, we'll sign off, you know? I wonder why live streams are lagging further and further behind, though, on YouTube. I don't understand why. Like, look at that. Look at that. Just took a sip of water. That's a sizable lag. Didn't used to be so big. Like, I'm plugged directly in. I don't know. I don't know. Not really important, is it? Just something I'm musing about. So anything you got, friends, happy to chat. Thanks for being here if you're here live. Thanks for being here if you're here on the replay. Appreciate you. Um, if you are unable to take the course or don't want to take the course, which by the way, speaking of unable, the course is going to probably have two sections this time. A daytime, Wednesdays at noon Eastern time, US Eastern, and Thursday evenings probably at 7 or 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. We had some interest across multiple time zones, and again, I'm trying to cover multiple time zones like I did with, not just did, like I do with the flagship course, with the workshop course. So bear that in mind as far as possibilities for taking the course. And each section is 4 people maximum, just because, as I learned in the spring run, there's truly limited time. So we want to make sure it's as intimate and useful as possible for everybody in the share sections. It's, yeah, it's a truck. You can go around it. Sorry, a lot of beeping outside. How to pitch a show? What do you mean, how to pitch a show? Who are we pitching to? That's saying more to me, because a pitch depends on who you're talking to. If you are just talking to someone randomly about your show, also hi Vince, hello. If you're talking to someone randomly about your show and you're just trying to give them the information, know your log line, know the basic information about your show that's kind of hooky and catchy, and talk to them about it that way, get their interest, get them to ask questions. We are pitching to, let's say, a commercial producer. That's a different story for sure. You're still going to want to know your log line. You're still going to want to know your catchy points and kind of like have an elevator pitch that is ready to go. Sorry, just got a word of text. An elevator pitch that's ready to go. That's important. If you are pitching, if you already have a commercial producer or you are commercial producing and you're trying to pitch to investors, that's a different process. Yeah, that's where things like a pitch deck or pitch documents can come into play. It gets a lot more complicated than that. If you're pitching like an artist you like to join you on the project, then it's good still to know what the catchy points are, but like why are they interested in joining you on the project? Like what are the connective pieces where you're like, yeah, you should join me here. That's a good thing. If you're trying to like pitch to a nonprofit organization, my question is, do they have a submission process, and did you go through the submission process? And if you're trying to circumvent the submission process, don't! Unless you have a personal relationship with someone there and they say, yeah, you know what, just come into our office and you can pitch. So otherwise, just like follow their submission guidelines. Hopefully that was useful. I don't know, that was kind of rambly. Not in a bad way. Just a wee bit of ramble. Yeah. Any other questions here today? There's something in my eye, and I thought it was just a strand of hair. It appears not to be. My goodness. Yeah, but pitching is an important skill. We'll have to know how to do that. And there's info on pitching. Not a ton of info on pitching in the collective, but there is some in there. I plan to put more in there. Again, I'm writing this book about the whole process of writing a musical. And That is going to be also turned into a video course. Actually, the video course will happen before the book comes out. Let's be real. The video course, really courses, will be in the collective as well. So a lot of this info, the book and beyond info, um, like workshop course info, answers to questions like these, the whole process will be in there. So if you have questions about that stuff, you can come join me. Where to find investors? Isn't that the age-old question? Depends on your show. I mean, here's the thing about where to find investors. If you are looking to become a commercial producer, that's when you need to find investors. If you are not planning to become a commercial producer, it's not your job to find the investors. That's the commercial producer's job. And hopefully they already have a slate of investors who they work with. But basically, like who's got income that they want to use to make art happen? Who can be an accredited investor and meet the guidelines? Who would feel fulfilled even if they didn't get their money back? Who's interested in the kind of work that you like to produce? Those are the places to look. And don't be afraid to just ask people questions. Like, hey, you interested in producing? You got the money? Maybe don't like yell at them, hey, and point your finger in their face like I just did, but yeah, that's a good place to go. If you're looking to raise a smaller amount of money, like we're not going for big commercial producer investment, but we're looking for people who are investing something small for a reading or a workshop or something, then I would say look to the people who are invested in you. Friends, family, people who love you and love what you make. Ask those people and say, hey, would you be willing to put in some money? Might be surprised. Yeah. Sweet. Any other questions? Or are we hopping off super early today? It's possible. It's possible. What's that? Cinderella? Cinderella. Pausing to see if there's any more questions. 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 Alright, alright, alright. I don't see any more questions coming in. That's fine. We can pop off early today, no problem there. Ha! One more question. Alright, alright. Songs or book first? Okay. If I were to read into the question, it sounds like the question is actually being asked is songs or libretto first, like songs or script first. To which my answer is, with everything we just walked through and the reasons we walked through it, book. But the book is the underlying story. It's not the script. You have to have your book first. Do you have to necessarily have the script before you begin the songwriting process? No, not necessarily. As I talked about later on in that process, once we got to the point where you were diving into structural act one and beginning to really flesh that out, yeah, people often will just begin their songwriting process there and then anyway. Because a lot of time the song that we want to write first is the character establishment for our main character. Like, all right, that isn't structural act one. So if you're beginning with your structural act one, do it. Dive in. Go for it. That's good. But I think writing songs before you have your story set is just a recipe for more revisions, perhaps more so than you want to be doing. Is my 10 cents on it? Yeah, full shiny dime. Full 10 cents. Congratulations, friend. Any other questions? Do I have any other announcements for you? Oh no, we just got the workshop course going this week. Love Cohort 8. They're lovely. What a wonderful group. So, and we had the Mastery Accelerator program started a few weeks ago, and Book and Beyond is coming up. So what's the next thing after that? I guess in the collective, it's the quarterly cabaret at the end of October. But like what I'm doing behind the scenes is working on those video courses. So as soon as all that is up and ready, I mean, the collective's value is very good already. Like it's a 20x value, and that's great. I love that. When those video courses in there, it's gonna be so freaking valuable. You guys should join us. Where to find composers? Another age-old question. You find composers by talking to people. No one ever liked my answers to this one, by the way. Um, Composers are everywhere. You just need to talk to people, essentially. If you want more direct places to look, the places are there are some Facebook groups out there that are still active with the words musical theater writer or musical composer or composer lyricist in there. I think there's three or four that are still active, and you can look in there and you can post and find people. I've not heard of much success occurring in there, but definitely has occurred before. There's that. There's communities like mine. You can join. We have writers. That's kind of the whole bag. So look for some composers that way. Attend events where writers might be there. Attend shows and talk to the people around you. Take a class like my class, BMI, the NYU graduate program, Berkeley, NMI, MCI, places to meet people. So courses are a great place to go. Of course, none of these are guarantees you're going to find someone, but you have to talk. You have to meet people and talk to them. Talk about your art. Talk about what lights you up. Talk about the things that you write or want to be writing, or both. Right? That's the stuff that's going to get people to connect with you enough that they want to join you, potentially, as a composer. That's my answer there. And people don't like that answer because it's not easy. It's true, it's not easy. Let's see, where did I find my collaborators? Have they all come from BMI? Well, a lot of my collaborators, no, they didn't all come from BMI because early on I was doing book music and lyrics myself on everything. And so the people I was collaborating with were directors and actors and designers, and that was fun. Those are also people to collaborate with who know other people, right? Just meet people because people know people. Uh, let's see, as far as composers, I usually am composer for a show. If I'm not, yeah. Yeah, I guess two of my collaborators who are composers, I met them both in BMI. Take classes, y'all. It's helpful. Yeah, that's what I got for you. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully today's process was useful to you. That process is going to speed up your everything. When it comes to writing the book of musicals, you have to have a good book. Not forget, books are important. It's the first thing that people criticize on the Broadway when a show doesn't work. And oftentimes they're right. So sometimes the book gets blamed for things that is not the book's fault. It's a production problem, not the book problem. But the book, the underlying story, is everything. If the story isn't good or doesn't make sense, or doesn't flow well, or isn't logical to the audience, then the show will suffer. But if the book is spot on, then that is also one of the first things to get praised as well. I mean, obviously, people praise catchy tunes, and that's great too. But the book is important, friends. So take that process, try it out, run with it, or come join me in the Book and Beyond course. I'll walk you through it. We'll do it together with feedback and facilitation and examples. It'll be fun. So, can you send me a sample of your project? I do not, I mean, you can. That's a paid service I offer to review things. So if that is what you're looking for, is for me to review what you've got and do some coaching with you, get some feedback, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, I probably will not be taking a look because I do so many things. But yes, if you are looking for feedback, feel free. All right, y'all. I hope you have a wonderful week. Next week will be a regular video coming out in 2 weeks. We will have a live stream interview happening here. More details on that to come. And then in 3 weeks, we'll be on the 12th, we'll be back to a Write With Me session. So I will see you soon. Have a wonderful week and weekend.